All right, welcome to this video on SWOT analysis. Now, this is a new format, so we'll see how this goes and what you think about it. But anyway, in this video, what I wanted to do was bring to you this concept called SWOT. All right, so let's take a closer look. Well, the concept called SWOT analysis, of course, starts with this concept of the abbreviations, right? SWOT. That's what we're used to all the time. Well, SWOT analysis is really about strategy. And really, where does strategy come from? So that's kind of the first thing to start with. Like how can you be strategic? Well, some people think, well, you either are strategic or you are not strategic. That's really not quite the case. The marketplace is where we want to take strategic concepts and apply them. So let's start first with what's the marketplace. All right, so when we talk about the marketplace, I'm going to go all the way back to your economics class when you drew this concept of price and quantity. And in the marketplace, there was this concept of a supply curve, and supply is really what our businesses are willing to supply, and so that concept again is called supply. Now, there's another thing that is in the marketplace, and that is demand. And demand in the marketplace is what we talk about as being consumers. And so I'm going to try to write consumers in there, and then up here for supply, I'm going to talk about businesses. And so the idea is that supply is created by the businesses, and demand is also created by consumers. And so what happens is when you find those two things equal, again, back in your class, that is where price comes in the market, and that is where quantity comes from in the market. Now, as a marketer, the goal that you have is to try to see if you can grow demand. Now, that means that your demand's going to shift out here to the right. It means that it moves up, an increase in demand. And so with that, of course, moves price. And so the concept of, and also, by the way, it moves volume, which is quantity. So the concept of becoming more strategic, SWOT is just a tool. There's going to be several that we'll look at, but SWOT is just a tool. So the concept of this strategy concept really relates to demand. And demand, again, is all about the consumers. And so in this effort, we're going to try to build demand or value through strategic ideas that could come from something called SWOT analysis. So that's really why we're talking about SWOT. All right, so what does SWOT stand for? Of course, the S, you may already know, relates to strengths. And really, strengths, another way to say that I like to use is what we are good at. So what we are good at is not too hard to come up with, and so that's called a strength. Well, not only are you good at things, but you also have what we call weaknesses. And weaknesses are really another way of saying I should say it differently. Another way to say that is we lack confidence in whatever it is. Maybe another way to say that is we need help. So there's different ways to say what your weaknesses are, but those are the concepts. All right, now what is the O? Well, the O stands for opportunity. Now, sometimes opportunity gets looked at as what you are good at, so that's what the opportunities are, and that's not what SWOT analysis wants to do. SWOT analysis wants you to take a look at opportunities that exist in the marketplace, and really a good way to look at that is what are some trends in the marketplace. So what are some trends out there in the marketplace? That's why we actually complete market research. So what are the trends in the marketplace? Another way to kind of look at this is what do others want? And so what do consumers want? Not necessarily maybe you have it, maybe you don't have it. That's the idea. But you really don't want to look at what you are as a company or yourself as a marketing agency. You want to look at what others are saying. And so that's this idea of opportunity. And then, of course, threats is the same concept with a T, but really the threats is best labeled as what would hurt us. So this concept of what would hurt us is really the other part. Now, when you do SWOT analysis, there's really a dividing line, and I've kind of already given it to you here. The idea of strengths and weaknesses and the idea of opportunities and threats are really two separate areas. In fact, when we come over here and look at strengths and weaknesses, these are what we call internal. And so that means that based on what our company is, what do we have, or what do we need to have? That is the concept of strengths and weaknesses. So what are opportunities and threats? Those are external. So what are others doing, or what are others needing? And so these concepts are really what build the need for SWOT analysis. All right, so let's apply this in an example that may help. So SWOT analysis is usually organized into kind of some tables. And so really what we're looking at here is a table that we can break out into these 4 quadrants. And so really the first quadrant is going to be, so what are our strengths? And then at the same time, or just after that, what are our weaknesses? And so if we start with these, this may help. Of course, then you're going to move down eventually and you're going to talk about what are the opportunities. And then the next thing you're going to talk about are what are the threats that would hurt us. And so that is the concept of SWOT analysis. And then if you look at this again in these rows, remember this is the internal items and this is the external items. And so we can kind of lay it out. So SWOT analysis is typically divided into this effort. So let's do an example. So what would be a good example? Well, a good example is going to be, so I learned how to use this. A good example is going to be one of your products. It was a Japanese beef breed to market animals. Really to market seed stock. So the idea of helping other people breed and have those type of cattle. Now there's a lot of reasons, and I don't understand enough about this, but I'm going to use it as an example. Just a little bit. I'm not going to do a whole lot here, but the idea is this company has like a Wagyu. There's a different name for it, but I'll let them stay with their own idea. But it's like a Wagyu beef that the Japanese have produced for a long time, and it's come to the U.S. and it's become kind of a big deal because the carcasses are big and so high yield but high quality grade, meaning that when you try to sell beef, you can get paid more, theoretically, hopefully, for choice or even prime, or they even have A and B brand grades above prime. The idea of these Japanese cattle is they reach that. So the idea is if they can sell these seed stocks to other breeders, they maybe could have their own herds and grow that product for them and actually hopefully reap better benefits later. But of course, they're more expensive to buy. So the idea of SWOT analysis might relate if I've given you enough about this example. So what are the strengths of a company like this? Again, I don't know the company, but I'm going to say that probably a strength is that they have the seed stock. In other words, that they have the animals that they got in for however they got them. Maybe also as a strength is they have the land so that they can raise them. Maybe they also have facilities. Maybe they also have cash flow. So the idea of strengths could be these types of things. They're all basically about the company and what they have. Now, what are some weaknesses? Maybe they lack additional acres for growth. So they have the land they need now, but maybe they lack growth. Maybe they also have a weakness of maybe limited access to new animals. Maybe they don't really have any new seed stock that they're coming in. In other words, they've got to keep getting bulls, and so maybe that's a problem. I should say that exactly. So weaknesses, maybe, weaknesses. Maybe that they lack a feedlot. In other words, if they had a feedlot, they could take some of the cattle that they don't sell, raise them themselves, and actually maybe build their own beef from there, but they lack that aspect of facilities. So these are some ideas that I hope make sense, and they are very much all, as you can see in this particular area, they are all internal, meaning they are all about us. All right, so all of these are all about us. All right, so let's now move on to external. So what are some opportunities out there in the marketplace? Well, again, knowing a little bit about that industry, there's a lot of opportunities out there because some are the growth of these high-end steakhouses. Now, there's always been a steakhouse, but there's this idea of high-end steakhouses, and so that is a unique part. And so let's say that that's an opportunity out there in the marketplace. Let's say that another opportunity is consumers have an interest today in, I would say, the quality of the food. So they've got an interest in things like grass-fed. They have interest in things like medication use. And so those are some ideas that they have as a consumer, and those kind of trends that are out there. So let's say that that's one. Let's say another one is health concerns. In other words, they are concerned about eating more quality product for health reasons. And so those are some things that could be opportunities. All right, now and again, we got to think about these for a second, because remember, it's external. So these are things that are not about the company, they're about the marketplace. All right, the last one is threats. So what are some things that would be threats to us? Well, probably one of those would be restrictions on imports of beef or imports of animals, which may hurt us when it comes to getting new seed stock, which is something we were also concerned about. What's another threat? This idea of low-fat diets. We're talking about an animal that creates a higher marbling or a higher grade. Well, that's going to end up being translated as a higher fat, so maybe there's things out there that may come about that can cause us some problems. So those are threats that could happen to us. What are some other threats? I guess some other threats may be new breeders that come into the marketplace. New breeders that come in that compete with our breed. So we have this special breed that we're talking about. Well, maybe some others come in and talk about that they have the same thing. So those are a threat to us. All right, so again, this idea of external is going to be not us any longer, but the marketplace. So the idea of SWOT analysis is it's just an exercise to come up with strategy, and these 4 parts are actually a pretty good way to look at every part of the business about you or the business about the market. And so bringing these together is the whole point. So what is SWOT analysis used for? Well, this whole thing that we just did, the whole use of this whole effort was really to do 2 things. And that was, 1, to see if we can do something called matching. And then I'll get to the second one in a second. Well, what is matching? Matching is this concept that if we can take things that we are good at, remember those were called strengths, and if we can connect them, if we can directly connect those to the opportunities in the marketplace, then this idea of matching is what we're hopefully going to do. In other words, if I am able to take, for example, the seed stock that I have, and if I'm able to match that to what consumers are wanting in the marketplace, the way that we're raising these and the way that they are genetically superior, then maybe that actually matches. What about health concerns? Again, the way these are raised and the way they can be managed. Maybe they don't get sick as much. I'm making up stuff here I don't really know enough about. The other one would be these high-end steakhouses. That's kind of a trend out there, and we have those cattle, so we ought to be able to try to directly appeal to them. Now, we're also selling seed stock to others, so we need to probably be thinking of what are some opportunities out there for seed stock sales. And so along the way, maybe SWOT analysis kind of shows you think your business is one thing, and maybe you're better matched with your strengths and opportunities in another direction. So really it just depends. But hopefully this concept of matching makes sense. And so these are some examples. Now, what's another use is called, and actually it's more valuable, it's called converting. So what is converting? Well, converting is a little harder to identify. What we're trying to do is we're trying to take things that we labeled as weaknesses plus things that we labeled as threats. And we would like to take them and try to use those to connect with opportunities. Now, this is actually really an important part, because with converting, what you're doing is you're trying to take things that initially seem to be bad for us, and we'd like to twist them around and make them be good. Now, it's not able to be done all the time, but you've got to try to do that. So, for example, we say that we lack a feedlot. Well, if we did get a way to feed, we maybe could actually supply those high-end steakhouses. So it actually kind of starts to mean that may be, and I'll change this a little bit for color, that this may be a great example of an opportunity here that was a weakness to us, and we're going to make it become a connected opportunity, because we're going to now have our own feedlot and try to market straight to these people as a business strategy idea. Okay, so that's one. If we come down here and we're worried about these low-fat diets would be another one. So we were worried about these low-fat diets as a threat to us, right, that we mentioned? Well, maybe that actually needs to be used in our marketing, because it is a perfect match with opportunities. Now, let me try to explain that one with health concerns. The idea of these Japanese cattle is the fat content that they have is a different type of fat. And I don't understand enough about this, but that's the way they market this. And the idea of our cattle being high fat, that is a threat in the industry. However, if we educate people a little bit more and provide them information, which it goes back to our marketing, then we can pull that over and actually connect that up with an opportunity, because people are concerned about high fat diets and cholesterol. Well, if the cattle that we feed have a unique combination of fat, then that actually might translate into a opportunity. It was a threat, now we've made it into an opportunity. So the idea of new breeders that could come in and hurt us, that may be a strategic business idea that we have to try to limit. And so maybe there's something new there that we need to come up with, either here or in the way we operate our business, that would help us manage that. So matching is trying to say, to summarize, matching is trying to say we are able to connect our strengths and our opportunities together. And when we do that, that is where strategy comes from. And so that is a strategic idea creator. All right, the next one is going to be converting, and we talked a lot about that as well. With converting, what you're doing is you're taking your weaknesses and your threats, and you're trying to make opportunities out of those. And once again, the idea is that is where strategy comes from. And if you can take these concepts and use them in your marketing plan, you can actually end up building strategy, which is the whole focus of what SWOT analysis is all about. All right, so hopefully this video helps you follow this concept called SWOT. You'll actually relate that to a homework, and of course this is going to be part of your project, which we will continue to talk more and more about. All right, thanks.